These people don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about anything. They're just like drug pushers, right? They get you addicted to something, and if you're then royally screwed, so be it, and I make money out of you, even out of your liquidation. That's what you guys are. It's just despiteful.
He built the world's most dangerous crypto exchange, a platform where you could bet 100 times your money on Bitcoin and win big, or lose it all in seconds. He wore tailored suits, quoted philosophers, and called himself a pirate. He mocked regulators, laughed at the law, and then walked straight into a U.S. courthouse to face them.
Arthur Hayes, you're a drug pusher.
I mean,
Arthur Hayes is a former Wall Street trader who created BitMEX, a derivatives empire at the bleeding edge of crypto finance. He didn't scam anyone, but his platform nearly broke the entire market. Was he a genius who gave traders what they asked for? Or the architect of financial chaos? Why did the US government come after him? And how did he walk away? Still rich, still free, and still talking.
I think Arthur has been such an outspoken, interesting figure in the crypto space. He really is going to go down in history as being one of the, the most talked about, like most prominent people, and one of the ones that we remember. People come and go.
This is the story of the Bitcoin billionaire who dared regulators to stop him and nearly got away with everything. Arthur didn't grow up surrounded by billionaires. He was born in 1985 in Detroit, Michigan, to two General Motors employees. Middle-class parents doing their best to survive the turbulence of a city built on industry and long past its prime. But from the beginning, Arthur stood out. His mother, Barbara, saw it. She moved mountains to get him into Nichols School in Buffalo, New York, a private prep academy filled with the children of lawyers, CEOs, and old money. Although he was an outsider, Arthur didn't flinch. He became a varsity tennis player, a varsity cross-country runner, and graduated second in his class in 2004. From there, he set his sights higher. The Ivy League and the Wharton School of Business, the proving ground of America's elite. It taught him the rules of global finance, but Arthur wasn't just learning to play the game. He was looking for a way to change it. After graduation, he moved to Hong Kong, the speed capital of global money. He joined Deutsche Bank, trading exchange-traded funds or ETFs. By his mid-20s, he was managing millions by the minute. Designer clothes, custom watches, rooftop bars, he had the job, the view, the title. But in May 2013, a quiet email changed everything. He was fired. Arthur didn't spiral. He was single, child-free, and still flush with savings. That same year, he discovered Bitcoin. To the outside world, Bitcoin was weird, internet money for conspiracy theorists and hackers. To Arthur, it was electric, a system with no middlemen, no banks, no gatekeepers. It reminded him of the markets he used to trade, but stripped down, faster, freer.
What was it that drove you to Bitcoin? What did you see that you said, okay, well, I want to get involved in this space?
I saw an opportunity to basically remake how financial services was done. And I don't think this type of opportunity comes along very often. So I figured I might as well jump in and try to make something out of it. You only really see these sort of monetary shifts, once every 100, 200 years.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the cusp of something really special here.
Yeah. It's moderate.
He started trading it, buy low, sell high. And that's when he discovered something interesting. Bitcoin was trading higher in China than it was in Hong Kong. Arthur smelled opportunity. He'd buy coins cheap in Hong Kong, move them to an exchange in mainland China, sell them, and cash out the difference.
And in China, you could actually sell Bitcoin at a 40% premium to what you could buy it for on the international market outside of China. So I got on a bus to Shenzhen, and with my passport, I faked an address and I got a bank account in China. And I opened up exchange accounts all across China on the major exchanges. And I got my money out of Mt. Gox and made 30%, it was great. And I thought, this is great business. Let me just arbitrage between China and the rest of the world. So I started doing that for a few months.
But here's where it gets crazy. To get his money out, Arthur had to cross the border with a backpack full of cash. He did this again and again, legally declared amounts, yes, but still. It was like a scene from Narcos, Banker's Edition. Arthur wasn't looking for a life of crossing borders with bags of cash. He was watching the infrastructure, the weak links. In October 2013, the crypto world cracked open. Mt. Gox, the largest Bitcoin exchange, collapsed. Hackers had stolen nearly $500 million and 24,000 traders lost everything. Arthur wasn't affected. He had gotten out just in time, but the lesson stuck. Exchanges weren't just risky. They were the single point of failure in a supposedly unstoppable system. That's when Arthur's mind started racing. He knew how to build financial instruments. He understood Bitcoin. And now he knew what traders wanted: speed, access, and security. He teamed up with two co-founders, Ben Dello, a genius coder from Oxford, and Sam Reed, an American engineer with a taste for back-end systems. They started building something new, something no one had seen before in the world of crypto. In 2014, they launched it, BitMEX, the Bitcoin Mercantile Exchange. No flashy marketing, no Silicon Valley polish, just raw speed and a deadly edge.
So what does BitMEX mean?
So BitMEX means the Bitcoin Mercantile Exchange. We're not a Mexican exchange. Mercantile is just a fancy word for a place where you can hedge certain risks. And we just allow people to hedge and speculate on the future value of Bitcoin, just like a sporting event.
Okay, so
At first, hardly anyone noticed. But the few who did, they saw what it could do. Because BitMEX wasn't just a place to trade Bitcoin. It was a place to gamble with it, to magnify it, to weaponize it. And it offered one thing no other exchange dared to do: 100x leverage. BitMEX wasn't always big. In the beginning, it was just a scrappy little exchange and no traders were biting. Some days there were no trades. No one bought or sold any Bitcoin. The fees barely covered the costs. In fact, co-founder Sam paid the bills with his personal credit card. While Arthur and Ben stayed in Hong Kong, Sam moved back to the US, handling customer support out of a Milwaukee co-working space. It was lean. It was frustrating. And for a while it looked like BitMEX might never catch on. But then, things changed. BitMEX didn't just offer crypto trading, it offered something most platforms wouldn't dare: 100 times leverage.
When we launched in November of 2014, in probably the subsequent 9 months, we had vast stretches of periods of zero trades. Literally, nobody matched a trade on our platform for days on end.
Who was funding you at this point? Where was the funding coming from?
We were funding ourselves. It was bootstrapped.
And no trade?
No trades. No venture capital interest. No, everyone thought we were crazy for doing derivatives. Bitcoin spot's not liquid. How could you do derivatives? There's no market for this. Blockchain's cool. Bitcoin's bad. You're going to get hacked. Like all these negative things that people are saying, and our business model is definitely validating those with zero trading volume.
What was the turning point?
We went from 3 times leverage to 100 times leverage in the span of a few months. We changed our margining model, and that's really started kickstarting our success in the fall of 2015. And we became known as the 100x leverage place, and that's how we gained our customer base.
That meant someone with just $10,000 could make $1 million trade. It was financial adrenaline, and people couldn't get enough. Meme culture exploded. Screenshots of losses flooded Twitter. Traders getting wrecked became part of the fun. Entire communities formed around watching massive liquidations happen in real time. It was finance turned into a full-blown spectator sport. Arthur leaned into the chaos. He once wrote that trading without leverage is like driving a Lamborghini in first gear. You know it's safer, but that's not why you bought it.
So today we have the world's most leveraged product to trade Bitcoin US dollars. You can trade Bitcoin with 100 times leverage on the most volatile asset in the history of the world. It's a lot of fun.
And with that kind of attitude, BitMEX took off. Arthur wasn't your typical CEO. He wasn't wearing Patagonia vests or speaking at Davos. He was cracking jokes, posting profanity-laced blog entries, and mocking regulators. He proudly called BitMEX a casino, and his followers loved him for it. He made it clear they weren't there to make friends with the regulators. They were there to make money. And make money they did. Between 2018 and 2020, BitMEX became the most powerful crypto exchange in the world by volume. Some days it processed more trades than the New York Stock Exchange. It famously invented the perpetual swap, a groundbreaking financial instrument that let traders bet on crypto prices without ever owning the asset. It became the gold standard for leveraged trading. This was the new financial Wild West, and Arthur was the sheriff. Unlike the buttoned-up execs in Silicon Valley, Arthur wasn't trying to fit in. BitMEX incorporated in the Seychelles, far from U.S. regulators. BitMEX blocked U.S. traders by blocking U.S. IP addresses from accessing its platform, but the reality was murkier. Thousands of Americans accessed the platform using VPNs, and U.S. regulators took notice. Arthur may have come from traditional finance, but he was playing a new game now, one where oversight was fuzzy and the consequences felt far away. BitMEX was untouchable. In 2018, they leased the 45th floor of the Chung Kong Center, Hong Kong's most expensive address. They installed a massive shark tank in the lobby. They had real sharks. It was a flex, a declaration. We're not just part of the financial system, we're the top of the food chain. Arthur loved the attention. At a crypto conference in Manhattan, he showed up in an orange Lamborghini, tweeting the photo with a grin. It was never about being humble, it was about being loud. But not everyone was impressed. In July 2019, Arthur squared off against famous anti-crypto economist Nouriel Roubini, also known as Dr. Doom, in a live debate dubbed The Tangle in Taipei. It was fireworks from the start. Dr. Doom didn't hold back. He accused BitMEX of enabling degenerate gamblers and retail suckers, saying people were getting wiped out every second. The only ones profiting, he said, were Arthur and his team.
You have here next to me a gentleman, and when he set up his business, he boasted that there were out there millions of what he called degenerate gamblers, and specifically what are these degenerate gamblers? They are retail suckers, right? Non-accredited investors who are not supposed to be investing in this stuff. And not only we're gonna peddle these instruments for them, but we're not gonna leverage it 5 times, we're not gonna leverage 10 times, not 50 times, 100 times. So, with 100 times, if the price movement's even 0.5%, you're wiped out of your position. Guess what? There is a whole nice Twitter feed called BitMEX Wrecked. Wrecked means a fact in the ass, where every other second, somebody has been liquidated by these guys, and thousands of them have gone into financial ruin. Of course, this thing is not regulated anywhere. It's set up in the Seychelles. And the guy boasted once and said, go and try to sue me in the Seychelles. Of course, that is impossible. So you can do anything. No MAL, no KYC. Everybody gets wrecked. You get commissions, fees. You get a whole liquidation fund out of people getting liquidated. So you can make money by people going into financial ruin. In some months, half of your revenues are from this liquidation fund. You have even internal insider trading desk, supposedly market making and so on. So that's what's your business model. And it's exactly representation of what this industry is all about. No regulation, no audit. You can talk your book. You can do anything. You can front-run your clients. You can screw them financially. And it doesn't matter if they're leveraged 100 times, if they're not a creditor, so be it, right? And officially, US investors are not supposed to be doing this stuff, right? because they're subject to US regulation. But anybody with VPN can avoid the IP and go and do investment with you guys and avoid it all. So
Arthur hit back just as hard. So what if there was 100 times leverage? You could get that in regulated US markets too, he argued. He pointed to exchange-traded funds that had wiped out investors overnight. Even in the most regulated financial markets, people still got wrecked. The crowd was divided. Some cheered, others cringed. When asked about registering in the Seychelles, Arthur gave one of the most infamous answers of his career. It just cost more to bribe US and European regulators, he said. In Seychelles, all you needed was a coconut.
You will understand that in the scale of global regulation, the SEC New York, the regulatory authorities in London or in Frankfurt are on a slightly different scale than the regulatory authorities in the Seychelles.
It just costs more to bribe them.
Costs more to bribe them.
Yeah,
But that's not really an answer, is it?
it is an answer. What do you think?
So how much are you?
Banks?
So how much are you paying to bribe the Seychelles authorities?
A coconut.
All right.
It was bold, it was reckless, and it put an even bigger target on his back. To fans, Arthur was a pioneer who beat Wall Street at its own game. He wasn't playing by their rules, and he didn't care who was watching. But to critics and regulators, BitMEX was no longer just an upstart. It was a risk to the entire financial system. Rumors of money laundering, insider trading, and front-running clients began to swirl. Arthur shrugged it all off, but the pressure was mounted. By 2020, BitMEX was handling billions a day. Arthur was on magazine covers and TV interviews. The platform had become a force, but while traders were chasing the next big win, the feds were quietly watching. And soon someone was going to knock on Arthur's door.
Care if it gets to 50,000.
Yeah, but there's no exchanges in the U.S. that are allowing people to do 100 times leverage for good reason. They know that our regulators would be all over that in a half a second.
At 6 a.m. on October 1st, 2020, Arthur's co-founder and second-in-command, Sam, was arrested by the FBI outside his Boston mansion. Hours later, prosecutors in New York announced what the crypto world had long feared: BitMEX was under fire. Arthur, Sam, and Ben were indicted for failing to implement anti-money laundering and know-your-customer systems on their platform. The charges sounded technical, but they carried weight. 5 years in prison for each count. The announcement was theatrical. Officials quoted Arthur's infamous joke about it being cheaper to bribe regulators with a coconut in the Seychelles. The FBI made it clear that the price of Arthur's crimes would not be paid in tropical fruit. The crypto world reeled. There were no accusations of drug cartels, no terrorist financing, no massive fraud, just missing safeguards. But that was enough.
Yeah, so I mean, there are two actions here that I see. One of them is brought by the CFTC, and that is a civil complaint for violation of the Commodity Exchange Act and its regulations. And then there's a related indictment in the Southern District of New York against Arthur Hayes, related to a lot of to some of the same activity. And the CFTC complaint is focused on the idea that Hayes and his other co-founders, through the BitMEX group of entities, operated an unregistered designated contract market and swap execution facility, and also that they acted as futures commodity merchants, FCMs, and that they basically did all that without appropriate registration and licensure from CFTC. And one of the key core aspects of the complaint is that they were soliciting U.S. customers and servicing U.S. customers, which subjected them to regulation in the U.S., but they weren't complying with U.S. law.
The indictment shocked even veteran lawyers. Prosecutors almost never go after individual executives for compliance failures. Big banks had broken the same rules for years. HSBC laundered nearly $1 billion for the Sinaloa cartel and did business with sanctioned countries like Iran and Sudan. They paid a $1.9 billion fine. No one went to jail. Barclays, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse. The list goes on. The big bank CEOs wrote checks and moved on. Arthur didn't get that option. The government didn't buy BitMEX's claim that Americans weren't using the platform.
We've exited the U.S. since 2015. We've chosen not to participate in that at all. We do not think that the United States presents a good business opportunity for the products that we think the customers would like to trade.
And so you're removing 330 million people from your equation.
But I'm adding 6 billion.
You're adding 6 billion.
Sure, BitMEX blocked U.S. IP addresses, but thousands of Americans used VPNs to get in. Prosecutors said the platform's anti-money laundering and identity checks were only a little more than a facade. When the FBI came, Sam was caught off guard. But Arthur? Arthur disappeared. For 6 months, he was a shadow. He slipped out of Hong Kong and vanished. Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia. No one really knew. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some swore they saw him on a Caribbean beach. Others claimed Jakarta. He became a ghost, no fixed address, burner phones, one-way tickets. Every knock on the door made his heart pound. The man who once mocked regulators, who once called BitMEX a casino, was now on the run, never saying where he was, never staying too long in one place. But you can't hide forever. On April 6, 2021, Arthur handed himself to U.S. authorities in Hawaii. 6 months after the indictment, the fugitive had surrendered. When Arthur touched down at Honolulu International Airport, federal agents were waiting on the tarmac. The man who had been a fugitive for 6 months didn't resist. He quietly surrendered, then handed over his passport and walked into custody. In the weeks that followed, Arthur stood in court and pleaded guilty to a single charge of violating the Bank Secrecy Act. He agreed to pay a $10 million fine. The judge spared him prison, sentencing him instead to 6 months of house arrest and 2 years of probation. For Arthur, the sentence marked an abrupt shift from crypto's loudest showman to a man forced into silence. Arthur's co-founders weren't spared. They also pleaded guilty, paid hefty fines, and served probation. Arthur had already stepped down as BitMEX CEO soon after his indictment, and the exchange itself crumbled under the weight of the case. The platform that once processed more trades than the New York Stock Exchange was no longer the beating heart of crypto trading. Competitors like Binance and FTX surged ahead. Even the famous BitMEX office sharks were now gone. Arthur spent his house arrest in a luxury condo in Miami Beach. It looked like paradise. A wraparound terrace, a wide balcony overlooking the bay, and yachts slicing through the water below. Occasionally, he was permitted to leave for dinners or to meet members of Miami's crypto scene. To some, his confinement seemed lenient, even enviable, but to Arthur it was still a gilded cage. When his house arrest ended in January 2022, Arthur didn't linger. He left the U.S. immediately and flew back to Asia, where he could move freely again. Arthur eventually reinvented himself. He became something of a crypto philosopher. He wrote sprawling, eccentric essays with titles like Zuck Me Harder, Apocalypse Ponzi, and Double Happiness. The blogs were manifestos, reflections on the future of money, markets, and power.
Some more news out of the White House this hour. Eamon Javers, what's the latest?
Hey there, Kelly. CNBC has learned that President Trump has issued pardons to the 3 co-founders of the Bitcoin mercantile exchange, or known as BitMEX. They had pled guilty to a range of charges related to money laundering and failure to police the exchange. The 3 men issued pardons are Arthur Hayes, Benjamin Dello, and Samuel Reed. Now, Reed had pled guilty.
Then in March 2025, President Donald Trump granted full pardons to Arthur and his BitMEX co-founders. The pardon didn't undo all the damage, but it wiped away the legal stain. Arthur roared back into the spotlight, speaking at conferences and on podcasts, boldly predicting Bitcoin would hit $1 million by 2028.
And so, here are the fucking maths. where do I get this idea that Bitcoin could hit $1 million? During COVID, the COVID stimulus programs and all the aid that was given to the financial sector within the United States totaled about $4 trillion. And from the lows of March of 2020 to 70,000 in 2021 in November, we went up about 10x. Remember, price is set on the margin. It matters about the marginal price, not the whole stock. And so if we have less Bitcoin on exchanges due to ETF demand, and we're printing double the amount of money between now and 2028 than what we did till COVID, then Bitcoin $1 million is just easy.